To write MIDI notes, create a MIDI track. I'll delete this previous one so we can go through the exercise. So I'm holding Command, Option, and typing N, and select Software Instrument, which is for MIDI. And there's the new track at the bottom. Just clicked on its header a couple times so you can see where I am, which also closed the info window, which opened by default, I guess. And that was the editor window that I just opened and closed with Command E. You can enter MIDI notes manually by mouse clicking in the editor window with a piano roll selected at the upper left of the edit window. See, clicking, I'm making sure, reading my notes, making sure I covered all this. Clicking in the upper right, drag to the upper right one more time, horizontal link. Sorry. Oh, let me go over that. To write MIDI notes, create a MIDI track. Command click in the track region area to create a region. The region can be lengthened by aligning the mouse with the cursor to the lower right edge. So I'm command clicking to create a region, and then aligning my mouse cursor on the lower right edge, and I can lengthen the region, and it's by increments shown in this menu for the grid, which I now set on whole notes or whole bars. So I can change the length, but only by whole bars. And then whatever is in there, I can create loops by clicking on the upper right of that region, and the tool turns into a circular icon with an arrow, and that'll, as you can see, create loops like I just created 4 instances of that, and you can drag them back and take the loops away, or additional instances is what that is. So I'll leave that single bar there. Now I can enter notes by mouse clicking in the editor window with a piano roll selected to the upper left of the window. So I'm typing Command E, there's the editor, and here's this piano roll. The other option is score, and I'm using piano roll. And you see the vertical piano keyboard in the editor shows the notes by octave. I'll use this tool and drag this window up so it's taller, and then I can use the slider at the far right here to move the piano keyboard up and down to change the range I'm viewing. I can also, with a trackpad, use a 2-finger gesture and slide up or down, or I can click with a mouse, I think, in this region area. No, that doesn't. Yeah, that works. If you go all the way to the top and bottom like that, press down and drag out of the out of view area, and it'll move it. Anyway, let's write a kick and snare part. The kick is C1, which is labeled C1 right there. And oh, we have to have a keyboard. We have to have a drum track, drum instrument. So Command I, and in this browse menu I'm choosing under drum kits, and I like from the Jam Pack, I like the Studio Heavy kit for more rock music. You have to wait for that to load, and then I'm closing that, and now I should have drums there. If I click on that C1, it should be a kick. There's the kick. And E1 is the snare. So the notes ascending vertically on the piano keyboard are C1, D1, E1, F1, G1, A1, B1, and then as you see there, C2. Each one a different drum. So all this stuff is different instruments. So I clicked and dragged across them. The snare is E1 again. So it's 2 white keys higher than C1. Here's C1, there's E1. choose the duration as an eighth note with the grid icon at the upper right of the editor window, not this one, and choose eighth note, and that'll be half beats. In common time, an eighth note is a half a beat. Drums are one-shot instruments, and you don't need to specify their duration, because wherever you indicate that they play, they'll just sustain for whatever period of time the sample or synthesizer plays that particular drum. You don't determine when it stops. Since you don't want notes to overlap, it's best to write drum parts with the smallest common duration. So if I'm writing things that are increments of half beats, like half beats and whole beats and 2-beat notes, I should use half beat, because that's the smallest common duration, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm writing a part of whole and half beats, so I'm choosing an eighth note to represent the half beat. Each note I click will have a duration of a half beat measurable on the timeline, and you'll see that as soon as I do this. I'm now entering a kick drum to the right of C1 by holding the command key down and clicking with the mouse. Now I have to move my timeline, and I notice I have the loop on. I have to turn that off with the letter C and type return to get at the beginning of the timeline. And now I'm ready, so I can see up the top of the cursor of the editor window, I'm at bar 1 right here, and this would be bar 2, but I want to be back there, bar 1. So now just to the right of C1 and vertically aligned with bar 1, beat 1 in the ruler, I'm going to click holding down the command key right there. And I just wrote a kick at bar 1, beat 1, and it's at C1, which is a kick. Now I'm entering a snare to the right of E1. This is E1. And to the right of E1, vertically aligned with the beginning of beat 2 in the timeline. So here's these markers up at the top, by the way, for that bar 1 are half beats. So beat 2 would be here. So to the right of E1, aligned with the beginning of beat 2, I just clicked and wrote a snare. Now I'm entering a kick drum to the right of C1, vertically aligned with the last half of beat 2 in the timeline. Oops, I missed that. Well, that's a good opportunity to show this. If you click in the middle of a note you've written, you can drag it. So I just clicked and dragged it. And by the way, you can change its duration by clicking on the right or left end and dragging. I guess not, only on the right end. Okay, I thought it was the left end too. I always do it on the right, but that's the only way it works. And while I'm at that, I'll show you how I can copy that note. Holding down the Option key, I'll copy that note from the last half of the second beat to make another one at the beginning of the third beat. Or I can hit the Delete key to erase that, or the I'm writing another note holding the Command key, or I could erase that note by undoing its writing with Command Z. Either way, I got rid of it, and then I'll write it again by clicking. So you can click a note in, or you can take a previous note and copy it by Option dragging. Hold the Option key and click on it and drag it. And now I'll write a snare across from E1 on beat 4. So hold the Command key, click here, and use the loop tool by aligning the cursor of on the upper right of the region, not in the editor, but up in the timeline, up here. I'm clicking near it so you can see where I am, but up in the timeline. Oops, double clicking and I close the editor, which doesn't matter. But here I'll align with the upper right of the region and drag it to the right and make 4 instances of it. And now press the return key on the keyboard, on the computer keyboard. Make sure you're back at the beginning, which we were anyway. And then press the space bar, and it will play. It's a good basic American rock beat. Now, if I wanted that to loop, remember, I could press the C key, adjust its duration. I first drag it to the left, or I could change its duration by dragging the left end of it and elongating it to the left, and I could elongate it to the right. And remember, I could click anywhere in the middle of that and drag the whole thing left or right, but I'll leave it right there. So it should play that whole thing indefinitely until the computer disintegrates or the electricity goes off. So they'll just keep repeating. And whenever I press return with a loop, let's say I had a loop set just at the end of this, like that. Whenever I press return, it's going to go to the beginning of the loop. It made the whole screen jump back, but if you look, when I scroll the screen over, here's the scroll bar, by the way, for that, down there. The return key will take you to the beginning of the loop if a loop is set. I'm calling that a loop. Sorry, that's actually a cycle region. It's different. That yellow marker there, that's a cycle region. A loop is what we created here. Okay, so that cycle region, like that, the return key will take you to the beginning of that. Or if there's no cycle region, then the return key would take you to the beginning of the whole song. Okay, I hope that gives you a good start.